Hello and welcome to Delta College Impact. I'm Roger Waller, your host for today's program. Did you like those pictures that you saw at the beginning of the show? I think you're going to learn a lot about how they're done and some of the students who helped to put together those pictures and the instructor behind all of that is we're going to talk about the Delta College Electron Microscopy program. And joining me on the first half of the program, we have Dr. Judy Murphy of our Electron Microscopy program and Robert McLean, a student in the program. Judy, let's begin with you. What is electron microscopy?
Electron microscopy is very basically seeing things that you normally don't see, seeing the very small things like viruses and bacteria and integrated circuits, or the connections that are made on integrated circuits. So seeing the very small things at high resolution so you can see them very well.
Now, how'd the electron come into it? I sort of remember going back in school and we have electrons and neutrons and all that kind of stuff. How's the electron part of the microscopy?
Well, when you use light, you're limited in resolution to a certain number. So you can see with your eyes, for instance, down to maybe seeing a quarter of a millimeter. And when you look through an optical microscope, a light microscope, you can see about 100 times or 1,000 times better. But to do better than that, you have to have something that has what we call a wavelength that's much shorter than light. So they went to electrons, which has a much shorter wavelength, so you can see things down to the area of 2/1000th of an inch, really tiny.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, I do have to take a great deal of pride here at Delta College because, Judy, you should mention about how many programs in electron microscopy training are there around the country?
Well, there are two programs in the country. Ours has been in existence since 1970 that actually specifically train microscopists in a two-year program. And there's one that was derived from ours that started in about 1994 in Madison, Wisconsin.
That's amazing. So we take a lot of pride about the microscopy program. And we should talk a little bit about one of the students, and that's Robert McLean. And Robert, I know when you came to Delta, you really didn't think about a microscopy major. What was it that said microscopy is something you wanted to pursue?
Actually, while I was going through some agriculture classes, in the science books you see a lot of pictures that are taken on electron microscopes, and that sparked my interest. And then knowing somebody that had gone through the program told me to check it out, and so I went through a tour of the lab and thought it was very interesting and thought that I would be interested in taking the courses. So I enrolled, and I'm still finishing my certificate, and hopefully I'll graduate soon.
And I know one of the things we probably should talk about is that certificate, because that's really one of the focal points of the program is to get students prepared to get their certificate. Now, what's involved in the certificate program here at Delta?
We have two certificates, one in biological area and one in the materials area. Although at this point we encourage people to take crossover courses so that they're multiple marketable. So they take 18 courses in microscopy plus core courses in chemistry, physics, math through trigonometry, and biology or engineering. And then they go through the microscopy course where they do a lot of not only theory but a lot of hands-on, so they know how to prepare the specimens and how to use the instruments, as well as how to interpret the data and how to write good reports and how to verbalize it so they can talk about those reports and statistically analyze it so it has some meaningful results.
And I think that that's a great point, is that the program isn't just microscopes, it's learning how to write reports and also present information, which I guess, Robert, brings a little different perspective to science.
Yes, it does. When I first started, you think of science as, something that you see on TV or on the news, a new discovery. But when you're on the other side writing the reports and learning how to do all the experiments, it becomes almost a new world, so to speak. You see all the things that it takes to make a discovery or to find something new, instead of just, oh, look, we see the benefits, but you get to be part of that.
And I think one of the great things is you're getting some experience in doing that just now, because you've been connected and you're working with Chevron in one of their labs over at their Richmond facility. What's involved in your summer program?
I got hired there. Somebody that was at Chevron and actually went through the program a while ago called and said that they were looking for somebody and they needed someone that was in the microscopy and that could handle the instruments that they had there at Chevron. And so I decided to call and send a resume, and they called me back, and I was hired almost instantly because the need that they had there, and there's not the average person that can run the microscopes or the equipment that they had. So I've really enjoyed working there so far.
Oh, I think that that's great. And to talk and show you a little bit more about this equipment, we're going to give you a tour of the microscopy lab here at Delta College. And Robert and Dr. Murphy will talk to you a little bit about what we're seeing and some of the specialized equipment that we have here. Now, Judy, one of the things that you might want to do is to walk through and give our audience a little bit of an idea of what we're watching.
This is in a preparation area, and the students were looking through light microscopes. Right now you see the computer systems. Most everything is digital nowadays, so that even our light microscopes are digitized into computers so that we get the results out. Charlotte is looking at an integrated circuit, and before she does the preparation, there we have a student doing thin foiling to make metal foils, and that's polishing integrated circuits so that they can do cross-sections for both scanning and for transmission microscopy to look at where the fault might be. You can see the circuit is on the bottom of that black surface, and then it's being polished. Here we see somebody doing thin sections, and by thin we're talking down to 3/1000th of an inch thin. And
so that is actually cutting a section of the sample, I guess, to get cross sections of that.
Right, it's a ham chopper at the ultimate level. Really thin.
The real fine Vegematic here.
Right.
Now this is some of that specialized equipment, and one of the things I know that you have to do is to get a lot of this equipment donated, because these are not cheap pieces of equipment. You might give our audience an idea of what it's going to cost for some of that equipment as we're zooming in on. Is this an ant?
This is an ant on a scanning electron microscope that scans across the surface to get the image where we can look at surfaces. This is a JEOL, this is actually a transmission microscope where we look through samples. These instruments are anywhere from $300,000 to $350,000. This particular one was partially purchased and partially donated by JEOL. This is a monitor that the image is projected into through what we call a CCD camera, something like the old video camera, where we can actually look on a screen and see it much easier. This is a donation from IBM, a $500,000 environmental microscope, and the advantage of this is you can put wet specimens in it so that you can actually look at glops of mustard and mayonnaise or wet bugs, or look at polymers, or look at greases, or whatever you need to, and it doesn't have to be dried like all the other electron microscopes. These are diatoms that you're looking at now, something like the diatomaceous earth you put in swimming pool filters so that it cleans up the water. This is the software that runs that microscope, so everything is computer driven. And of course Shelley Mettler, one of our students who now has a marvelous job at Gladstone Institute. This is our Philips 400 transmission microscope, and again Jason Murphy there is looking at heart tissue, so he can look at thin sections where the electron beam goes through it. This microscope was donated by Philips, the maker of that particular microscope, and this microscope runs about $300,000. So these are not inexpensive instruments, and so we have to really rely on the donations.
Well, it's so impressive, the varied applications, like you say, looking at heart tissue, or looking at mustard, or looking at oil in a refinery. It's remarkable to see, what the varied uses of this equipment is.
Yes, one can look at almost anything, and in most of the traditional microscopes the samples have to be dried, except the environmental microscope where the samples can actually be wet. This particular microscope was donated partially by Chevron, partially by JEOL, which is a microscope manufacturer. And in this one, we can digitize the image so that we put it in a computer system, and then our lab is networked so we can print them directly out to the printers, or we can even send them to clients if they want to looking at a particular sample. We can send them directly over the internet if they desire that. Most of the time we do print them out anyway to have hard copies, and of course if they're for student projects they have to turn in the projects. This is our focused ion beam, which doesn't use electrons, it uses gallium ions. And the focused ion beam's advantage is to finding faults in integrated circuits. And this is a $750,000 instrument that was donated by Intel because they're so short of focused ion beam operators, so we can integrate that into our program. You can see on there, there's actually a circuit, and you can actually make connections where connections weren't before. If you have a connection that's failed, you can reconnect it. So you can redesign circuits. You can prepare specimens even for the transmission microscope and thin them on the focused ion beam. And so this is a marvelous tool, and it's only been around for about 8 years, the tool itself, so it's quite recent.
And I know one thing we should point out is you can see how the facilities are somewhat cramped. And in the second half of our program, we're going to be talking about Judy's dream that she hopes to bring to reality, and that's about a new microscopy building. And I know here we go with some of the printouts of the work.
We printed the samples out from the microscopes that were just coming off on the printers. These are some of the students that were working in the lab, finishing their final projects. And several of those people graduated, so they're off on their jobs by now.
And I think that that's fantastic, and I hope that everybody in our audience really enjoyed the tour. And I think before we really start to think about the next step, which is Phase 2 of the microscopy program, which is the new building, we should talk about that business and industry linkage that we have here at Delta College. And some of the businesses you alluded to, medicine, research, what are some of the actual practical applications that we've done here at Delta College with that equipment?
We've worked with several of the agricultural growers, the farmers, to solve some of the problems in the field. For instance, crazy top in almonds, we were trying to find out if we could find out sooner if the tree was going to have crazy top, and then they could treat it before they have to actually wait till it does, and then of course they have to dig the trees out.
And crazy top being a disease, is that
right?
Correct?
Crazy top is a disease. Where you drive along and see the almond trees, and some of them look like have scarce leaves on the top, and they kind of grow crazy at the top of it, is why it's got its name. We also, the spinach crop, many times they get a mosaic virus, so they'll bring in the spinach and find out, because there could be many things, so they don't really know how to treat it, and we can, in probably an hour and a half, have a picture of a virus for them so they can treat it immediately and save the spinach crops, and we've done that several times. We work with the walnut growers every year. In about December, they have to look at their meat crop, the walnut meat, for the next year, and if they have a bacteria in the meat crop and they have to wait to see it, then of course the meat's already eaten. So we look actually in the seed and we can see if there's bacteria starting, and they can spray it immediately. So we've saved many crops in the walnut fields, and so that's very helpful to them.
And I know we're looking at some really fine pictures on the screen right now. And Judy, you might mention, some of this looks like graphic artwork. Now, what are some of these things?
Well, this is a pollen that's taken. This is taken by an internationally famous photographer, actually, who bought a scanning microscope and got into the photography of scanning microscopy. And he's put on 3 different detectors and pseudo-colored many of these to really make art objects out of scanning microscopy. These are all different types of pollen, and you can classify pollen by looking at the surface of it. And so he's gone through the animal world and the plant world and picked the best of all those and made some really dramatic posters, which are around several places. One sees them.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm sure, Robert, as you started to think about this, and I guess that's not traffic in LA, but sort of the
This is an integrated circuit.
integrated circuit. But one of the things, Robert, as you looked at those pictures in your science book, all of a sudden you're now one of those people who can take these pictures. One of the things, I guess, were you surprised at the technology?
Actually, I was. I did not know that we have this technology here at Delta College. And when I came to see the lab, I was actually sitting down and actually touching one of these pieces of equipment that does this right away the same day, and I was actually quite impressed. I was nervous at first, but it really was a neat experience.
And I know one of the great things is, how'd you find the compatibility of our equipment here at Delta College with the equipment that you're working on over at Chevron?
It was very, very similar. In fact, some of the equipment is the exact same equipment. And I came in, and the first day of my job, they asked me, do you know how to run this, or can you get me a sample from this piece of equipment? And I said, sure, give me what you want me to have done on this piece of equipment. And in a couple hours, I had some pieces of a sample that were ready to look at in the scope.
So were they surprised or pleased?
They were very pleased that I could complete something without hours and hours of instruction, and that I could just sit down and get samples ready right away.
Now, Robert, what sort of career do you see yourself pursuing after getting your certificate here at Delta College?
I would really enjoy working for Chevron in a full-time position if one comes available. If not, I would like to go into the integrated circuit industry and do some type of an application there.
And I know one of the great things that you've seen is that Robert will be getting his certificate here, but we also have the opportunity to talk a little bit more about the associate degree. And when we come back after a brief public service message, we're going to talk a little bit more about the program, the students, and especially about our new lab, and talk to you a little bit about how you too can get involved in helping our microscopy program here at Delta College. So stay tuned. We'll have a lot more interesting pictures for you and talk a lot more about our electron microscopy program after these brief public service messages. We'll be right back. Just a few humorous jokes will help. Welcome back to Delta College Impact. I'm Roger Waller, your host for today's program. We're talking about electron microscopy. On the first half of the program, you started to see some of the amazing shots that can be taken through an electron microscope. And on the second half of the program, we're joined by Pat Kaiser in addition to Judy Murphy. And Pat also works with our electron microscopy students. But off camera, I wanted to talk to Judy right up front and just say how much impressed I was with some of the artwork that was shown on the first half of the program. Now, who's the artist that did some of that stuff?
David Scharf is in Los Angeles, and he makes these posters. These are actually posters that are available that he sells commercially. And he gave us a signed set when he took the E-Tech parts off our hands, one of the older microscopes. And he has done various contracts for companies to make great posters and advertisements for the companies, and all sorts, the Terminex ad and or the Orkin ad on television.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, at the end of the program, or actually very shortly, we're going to be showing you a way that you too can see some of the output of our students here at Delta College, because they're posted on the internet. As you imagine, everything's getting on the internet these days, and so we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But I wanted to talk with Pat Kaiser. And Pat, what's your role in the electron microscopy department?
I'm the lab supervisor in the EOM lab, and I help train the students on the equipment. I order supplies, I do all the background work, and just kind of help take care of the laboratories so that the instructors don't have to do that.
And how many students do you have to work with on a daily basis?
In various stages through their education, probably between, I'd say, 60 to 80 students a year.
And one of the things I think we have to mention is you are a product of the Delta College program.
Yes,
and how many years did you take to complete the program?
I actually completed it in 2.5 years. I took 2.5 years because I started in the springtime, and the way the classes are set up, I had to wait for certain classes. I also earned my AA degree at the same time. I graduated in 1990, and I can't I can't imagine doing anything else than what I'm doing.
Now, what was it that intrigued you about the electron microscopy program? We were talking to Robert McLean on the first half, and I'm sure, like Robert, you didn't grow up thinking I wanted to go into electron
No.
microscopy.
Actually, it was kind of a surprise that I enjoy what I'm doing. I was a housewife for 17 years, and I was going to go to college so that I could make a living at doing something with my children grown, and I was told to look into the electron microscopy program, which I did, and it just seemed interesting to me for a while, and then when I went into it, it just kind of enveloped me. It grabbed me.
Oh, that's great. And we should talk, Judy. I know a lot of you have students with varied backgrounds and varied degree level. You might talk a little bit about some of your students, because you have students pursuing doctoral degrees as well as their associate degrees.
We have students that will get their AA degree, and we encourage them to do that while they get their certificates. And then many of them, after they get their certificate and an AA degree, go on to a 4-year institution and get their BS degree while they're working as a microscopist at that institution. And then several have gone on to get their masters, and some getting their PhDs, all the time working as a microscopist to make their way through. But even starting, some of our students come in the program with a BS degree. We have some people that have had lots of electronics in the Navy or the Army or the Air Force. We now have a student that she's second semester that she flew Tomcats. So just a variety of different types of backgrounds, from high school people because there's no prerequisite for the program but a high school diploma. So we have them just out of high school to very career-changing oriented program where people have done something else and now want to start something different in their life.
And I know one of the keys is your links to industry. And one of the great things that makes the program so attractive is their knowledge is in very much big demand right now. And so you might talk a little bit about some of the businesses that you work with and some of the careers that the students end up pursuing.
We have about 10 to 15 jobs per student, so there's never a lack of jobs for our students. We have a very good career center that when we get jobs, usually they email me or call me, and then we put the information on the net over to the career center, and then the students have already signed up with the career center, so the resumes are faxed out to the particular industries. And our students are in any industry that makes any type of computer product or pharmaceutical, or universities or hospitals. For instance, IBM, Xerox, IDT, AMD, any of those industries, and Genentech. There's Gladstone Institute.
Oh, stop. I know you have a bundle of them. And the great thing is that's where our students are going. And one of the exciting parts of the program that Judy has modestly not talked about is the magazine that she puts out on a monthly basis during the semester. And it's called Microscopy, as you would imagine. And Judy, you might talk a little bit about this student-driven magazine.
Well, Delta Microscopy is the magazine that the students put out 8 times a year during the school year, and it's paid for by advertisers, and it's sent all over the country to all the major microscopy labs, as well as to our past students that are now in industry or at universities or whatever they're doing. And so it not only keeps them up, but it also says once a month, here we are, if you need to hire a student, call us. And they do. And
it is very student-run. And Pat, I should ask you, did you have any articles mentioned in written for microscopy?
Yeah, a couple. We didn't have this opportunity when I was in school. This is fairly new.
Oh, that's terrific. Now, I should mention, we promised to talk a little bit about some of the pictures that you're going to be able to see if you go to the electron microscopy site on the Delta College homepage. Go under Department, look for electron microscopy, and these pictures are loaded on there. And I know, Pat, the students must take a lot of pride when they start to see their picture in the magazine or when they start to think about being worldwide now on the internet.
Yes.
How long does it take a student to come up with a picture like this?
Well, depending on what type of sample they're making, anywhere from hours to days to weeks as far as processing the sample and then preparing it for the microscope.
Well, it's fantastic, some of these pictures, and so I encourage you to go to the internet. Now, Judy, I have to kid you a little bit. When I went to the center here, I saw this envelope asking me for money, and that really leads us to talk about that new vision and that really hope that you hope to see is the new electron microscopy building. You might talk a little bit about that.
Yes, we're very crowded. We're very overcrowded, and we need space, and we've needed it for quite a while. So we're trying to We've already petitioned the state, and we have $5.2 million already, so we have a very good start. And we're giving people the opportunity to take part in the new Microscopy Technology Center by purchasing tiles, so they can put some sort of insignia or a name, or just contribute to the center. The least expensive tile, it goes anywhere from $100 to $1,000, and of course, for corporations, we would be more than happy to take anywhere from $25,000 to $1 million, and we would name the suite after them.
And I know you've been out working very hard to try to raise that money, and we have to really, again, say with a great deal of pride that you are an award-winning program. You might talk a little bit about your most recent award that was granted this year by the state of California.
Yes, we received one of the Student Success Awards, which was given to 10 programs in California, the state of California, that is most likely to help students succeed in the new millennium. And so we received this beautiful Lucite trophy for that. That was in 1999. In 1987, we received the Governor's Award for the best program in California.
And that was 1997 that you received that, so very recently. And I think that it's exciting, and I think the thing that we'd like to do is to ask you not only to get involved by visiting our website, but also to think about getting involved by making that contribution of buying a tile or working with your company if that's appropriate to help them sponsor our program down here. As you start to see, if you would like to make some donations, write and contact Dr. Judy Murphy here at Delta College. The address is send it to in care of the Microscopy Building Fund here at Delta, 5151 Pacific Avenue here in Stockton at 95207. And if you have any questions or have any equipment that might be appropriate for our program, you can also talk with Dr. Murphy by calling her at area code 209-954-5284 or by writing our Microscopy Technology program. And you can drop a note to Pat Kaiser also talking about some of the equipment that you could donate here at the college address, 5151 Pacific Avenue, again, Stockton 95207. It's an ambitious program that we have going right now. And Judy, I know that, like you say, we've raised some money, but you still have a way to go. And what would you like to say to the people to get them to say the importance of our program here?
Well, I think it gives people the opportunity, anybody the opportunity to really go as far as they want to go. And our program with no prerequisites allows them to do this and get good, high-salary jobs and very rewarding, challenging jobs. So it allows people to really go any place they want to in science.
And I think that that's a great way to end, and I want to thank you for watching our program, and hopefully you've learned a lot about microscopy, and come on down and help us out here at Delta College. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.